Namaste, hello, thank you for watching the video. I'm going to show you what yoga misses out a lot of the time, spinal movements. I'm going to show you a few joint movements first, and you can use this as a practice video to get more effective short practice. So it'd be brilliant for first thing in the morning. You know, you're just waking up and you can move in a way that you're not going to necessarily expect to find a yoga pose, but you'll get the benefits. What do I mean, the bits that yoga misses out? I've talked about this in a few other videos. You'll notice when you start to become aware of the movements independently of the hips and shoulders, so I'll do those two movements first with you. You'll see that actually a lot of the time we think we're moving the spine into a position. Actually the spine can stay still and the hips and shoulders will do the movement, which can put pressure on the knees, ankles, wrists, depending whatever pose you're doing. So generally we try and find a spinal movement. I'm going to show you some spinal movements from Yoga Synergy, and these spinal movements are to direct the spine. So most of the time I'm teaching you these little tutorials with my kit off. The reason is I'd like you to be able to see my spine so that you can see that it's actually moving and see the difference between the movement of the spine and the movements of the hips and the shoulders. And that's what this first exercise is. Alright, let's go! Okay, so starting in a standard neutral position with the feet as apart as you want them. You can have them closer together, but this can already be a kind of unnatural place for our hips to be. So we're trying to take a natural movement. Natural movement is functional movement, better for the movement of energy and information in the body. So a natural stance. If you want to test out your natural stance, you can do this thing that Leslie Kaminoff teaches. You close your eyes and just don't focus on the legs with your eyes, and maybe you do it with eyes open. If it helps you be more balanced, just let the leg hang out of the hips. So you're just lifting up the leg, and then trick is to try and relax that lifted leg as much as possible. Let it swing around a little bit. Find the most comfortable position for it to be while it's up in rotation. And then find, okay, that's the good one for me. And then I'm going to take it onto the other leg and just find a little bit of balance. I should have mentioned this is really tricky with the eyes closed, by the way. So either you can focus on a point up above you, it helps give you a little more balance, or you can close the eyes and you don't mind the challenge. And then again, you're just letting the leg hang, finding a good rotation. It's tricky to switch off the muscles of the lifted leg, but give it a go anyway. And then once you've found, okay, twisting in feels a little effort, twisting out feels a little effort, where's Goldilocks in the middle? Perfect. Alright, so just going to again do the same process, but have a good comfortable width amongst the feet. And for me, it's usually about shoulder width distance apart. When you look at your feet, if you're doing this straight on the edge of the mat, you might even notice that you've got one foot forwards of the other. So that might be pointing to a sign that, you know, no one's symmetrical, apart from a few models. But when you have, you know, natural spine, you've got natural twists. You know, we all have a different shape. We're all slightly asymmetrical. So honour that in your practice as well. You don't need to fit into a box that you're not. You're unique. You're asymmetrical, and that's awesome. That's what makes you awesome. One of the things. Alright, so eventually get onto the movements. Show you from the side. You can stay facing towards me. Drop the weight down into the heels, take the weight into the toes, and then up and back and down. So this one's really good because it helps to train this posterior pelvic tilt, which some people might find useful. I find it useful in my practice, as opposed to an anterior pelvic tilt where we close the lower back. If you try taking the movement in the opposite directions, forward, down, up and back, have a look what happens to your pelvis. You might notice that you're kind of scooping up with the back as you lift and creating perhaps some mobility here, but also perhaps some compression at the lower back. So try up and forwards, down and back. Alright, forwards up, back and down, forwards up, back and down. Now I'm trying as much as I can to mobilise the movement from the core. If I mobilise from the hips, you notice I get a bit more compression in the lower back. If I mobilise from the core and try to keep my spine upright, then this way I'm forced to move the spine a little bit more. Okay, so that's movement number one. Movement number two is the shoulders. Start to move your shoulders, perhaps best again if I show you from the side, you can face towards me. Lifting the shoulders up, forwards, down and back. So you create a forward circle. And then again, see if you can link this one up to the core. So the tummy goes out and down, and then the core goes down, back and up and forwards. And I'm just going to isolate it with the core here. Just move my arm out of the way so you can see. So you see what I'm actually doing here is basically a belly dance. That's tricky. That's a really functional thing to do. It's a really good thing to do if you can train your muscles to do this, because it helps to move blood, energy and information, chitta, if you like, if you're that way inclined to speak in Sanskrit terms. And the energy and information in the body, particularly around this important energetic area, so your digestive area, but also down here to reproductive area, but also the whole of your body is a reproductive area because your cells reproduce all the time. So when we talk about reproduction, it's not always about sex. Get your mind out of the gutter, you guys. Okay, and creating this one, and then moving it. And you see the first movement that we took, the hip movement, helps to release this area as well. So then you're moving a backwards roll of the hips, and a forwards roll of the pelvis. Tricky. Now the hips are kind of secondary in this one, so we just want to start to move the shoulders. And now when we get to the spinal movements, you'll start to see how the movements of the shoulders and the hips can affect the movements of the spines. You could prevent it or make it even more effective. Spinal movements, we start with that first action, drop weight into the heels and then forwards into the toes. And then the second action, we'll take the shoulders forwards and down. Turn your wrists in, lengthen to the back of the body, drop the sitting bones down. And imagine that you're continually in this action. You've got the sense that you're lifting up the front, as long as that feels good for your lower back. If it feels uncomfortable for your lower back to tilt the pelvis backwards, then don't do it. Instead, imagine that the sitting bones go low and then down towards the toes. This should just release. It's like you want to feel a softness and a bounce in the legs so that you can lower the pelvis towards the ground, but at the same time be light and lifted through the upper spine, and then you've got space in the middle. So turning the wrists in. Now this is without the shoulders and the hips. I have more or less a neutral spine. Now I can bend forward from the spine like this, but I can take the shoulders forwards and down, and that actually moves the upper spine into a forward fold, and it lengthens the nerves at the back of the upper back. If I drop the sitting bones down and forwards towards the toes, it lengthens the lower back. I keep the length in the lower back and then expand the tummy. And it's like continuing doing this action down to the heels, up into the toes, and then expanding the tummy, expanding the chest, and rolling the wrists out. And you notice that the length, the fingers at the lower back, they didn't really change. So I'm keeping the length at the lower back, maybe even lengthening if I drop the sitting bones forwards. And then lifting up through the chest, so expanded the tummy. So I've expanded the lower back, the lower front, and now the chest. A lot of the times, when people open the chest, they compromise the spine, because what they'll do is take the shoulders down and back, and the hips up and back. And then that compresses at the back. So instead, keep the back long by dropping the sitting bones down. You're still getting the back bend, and especially isolating the back bend where you really want it, which is here, the thoracic, which has a natural forward fold in it. So if you can secure here at the lower back and then bring the back bend into the upper spine, maybe you can see it from this angle as well. This one not so functional, but this one a more functional back bend. And it feels much more comfortable for me here. In the first one, when I take the hips up and back, it's just compression. It's weak spine. When I drop the sitting bones down, lengthen the lower back, lengthen the lower front by expanding the tummy, let it expand. If you can't expand the tummy, try expanding the pelvic floor once in a while. Yeah? That'll help you relax. Expand the pelvic floor as if you were going to go to the toilet, but no. Unless you're doing this on the toilet, then it's a great time to do it actually. But if you expand without going, then that's the trick, especially in a public yoga class. To expand the pelvic floor helps you to expand the tummy. Low back long, tummy long, and then fingers reaching back. Lift up the chest to create length in the front of the body as opposed to shortening the back. And then keep the chest open, the front body long, the low back long, bring the fingers into the shoulders, and take the shoulders forward. Then you can open up the upper back a little bit more. So these are spinal movements 2 and 1. Short spine, forward bend, backward bend. Long spine. Here you can make the spine even longer, relaxing the tummy, dropping the sitting bones down and reaching the fingers up. You'll feel the difference if you tighten the tummy and then try to reach the fingers, just restriction here and here. If you expand the pelvic floor, like you're going to go to the toilet, but not, and then relaxing the tummy, expanding, And you can reach the fingers a little bit more, you get a bit more traction through the shoulders and the spine. Okay, so that's the first example of how the hips can affect the spinal movements. When we bring it into spinal movements, 5, 6, 7, 8, twisting and bending to either side, you'll see how it happens here. So I'll show you from the back. Forward bend, lengthen the front of the body, and then lengthen the upper back. And then moving just from the spine. So keep the hips still, lift up the left side ribs, open the fingers, and then as you lean over to the left foot, that starts to bring the hips into play a little bit. Come back to neutral hips and isolate just spinal movement. Notice how when you drop the left hip down, you create even more side spinal movement, especially in the core area. So this part of the spine, it doesn't want to side bend or twist too much. That's what makes these twisting and side bending spinal movements really important. And these are the things that are overlooked and missed out from a lot of yoga, because this position of the hips technically should be what we're doing with the spine when we come into a posture like Trikonasana, triangle pose, or Parshvakonasana, you know, this one, side angle pose. You want the spine in this position because when you lengthen one side and tighten the other, you move the energy and information through the body by creating balance and pressure. Here, when it's open, blood, energy moves freely, smoothly. Here, we restrict it momentarily, creating a vacuum, so that when we move from one into a neutral spine, drop the hips down, again, take that flow down into the heels up, scooping forwards, expand the tummy, expand the chest. Keep the spine long as you bring the arms down, and then come back into spinal movement. Number 3, forward bend. Number 4, backward bend. And then more in a neutral spine. And take the right side to lift. Notice how the hips stay still. And then lean over to the right foot. That obligatorily opens the right hip. Coming back to neutral, you can do it by just dropping the right hip down. But try to keep length in the left side body by lifting up through the right. Push the left hip forwards and up. And externally rotate the left up. So this is like an active spinal movement, really good exercise standalone by itself, or you can do it as a warm-up for your practice. Because if you do a triangle, for instance, like this, on one leg, and it's going to stand you, pun intended, in good stead to do a triangle on 2 legs. Then you've got more chance of being able to move the spine. There's another spinal movement in a triangle pose, which is a twist. So you twist the tummy, the core, to the right. Checking that my neck can move, my shoulders can move, my fingers can move. So that's side bend, spinal movements. 3, forward bend. 4, backward bend. 1, 2, long spine, and 1, short spine. And spinal movement 7, lengthen the back of the body, lengthen the front of the body. And then twisting from the spine. So imagine that someone's holding your hips still and you're trying to move just from the spine, twisting. If this is difficult, again, expand the pelvic floor, relax the abdominal region. Let the sit bones drop down and forwards as if you were doing that first warm-up exercise. And you can do this in the posture if you like to check that it feels comfortable. You can do this movement visually, or you could just feel that you can do it really subtly. And I'm doing that movement now, but I'm doing it with the abdominal muscles. And it's kind of getting towards that belly dance. I'm still working on it. Yeah. Anyway. Again, when you start to bring the hips into it, notice how from your perspective, my hips have stayed in the original position. When I use the hips, twist much further. Then you can use the hips tactically. If I keep the spine twisted, but I start to push the hip forwards and untwist the left hip. It's a much deeper twist, and I feel it a bit more in areas that I wasn't feeling it before. So exit this posture, go down with the left hip, and again, create that scooping motion, take the tummy forwards, and then take the arms down. Same thing opposite side. I'll show you this one all from the side. Drop the sit bones forwards and down, expand the tummy, chest. Hips are still. Twisting from the spine. Relaxing the pelvic floor, relaxing the tummy. Twisting with the hips. Doing this, be careful with your knees. Grip the ground with the toes and the heels. Feel that it's comfortable for the knees. Try to push my left hip forwards now, as I keep the twist to the chest. And keeping the spine long to not pinch anywhere. If you have any signs of discomfort, any pinching, anything that feels in any way uncomfortable, it's not really yoga anymore. So be in that place day to day. It will open up. Move gently. Listen to your body. Spinal movements. 1, short spine. 3, forward bend. 4, backward bend. 1, 2, long spine. You really got to deal with that number in order. 3, forward bend. 4, backward bend. 2, long spine. 1, short spine. 3, forward bend. 4, backward bend. 2, long spine. 1, short spine. Short spine, but though when you bring the arms down, you can keep the spine long. And every time you move this progressive movement, you can link it up. You don't need to move towards the extreme of every action. In fact, much better not to. Don't overstretch, don't overtense, otherwise you can end up restricting the movement of energy and information in the body. So, when we use this flow of spinal movements, you can step in and out, different leg positions, but you're still trying to push the hips forward, scoop under, open the tummy, lengthen the upper back. Forwards, the tummy opens, chest opens, upper back opens. So the fingers are kind of gesturing. Here's another position you can take. Take that left foot, put it behind the right foot or even beyond into a twist. Again, check out the knees if it's a comfortable thing to do. A few of these is really great, especially if you're actively moving from the core area and trying to consciously loosen up here, soften the pelvic floor and soften the abdomen. And with natural breathing, this is a pranayama exercise because without even thinking about it, you're starting to breathe in a way that is functional, natural, the sort of breath that appears during meditation. A lot of times when I started to practice this movement, I would do this and bend forward, which is okay, but it's actually quite a lot of exercise in the back. You'll be surprised the next day you might feel it in your mid-back. So you can also do it, and probably better to do it with the spine upright like this. When you lift the arms, if you lift the chin, push the throat forwards. Also push the shoulders forwards. So, here we'll keep the shoulders forwards and just turn the wrists out. Now this position, shoulders forwards and down, fingers up and back, this creates bandha around the shoulders, also around the wrists. It's a mudra. When you reach the fingers back, you feel a sense of stretch along the palms. It's your median nerve. When you take the shoulders forwards and down, this position should technically be the position that we are in with the bottom shoulder in Parshvakonasana. What does that look like? Side angle pose. You see? With the shoulder pushing forwards into the knee pushing out into the shoulder. Whereas sometimes people tend to get so into the twist that they've taken the shoulder back. But if you push the shoulder forwards and then try to twist, it makes it much more a functional action from the core. So that's one thing to consider, that actually these postures, these ancient postures that we practice, the alignment requires us to do certain actions that stimulate the nerves, and these also correlate to acupressure meridians. I believe this one is the lung meridian, and this one is the heart meridian, and the pericardium meridian. So it's a meridian that is an organ in Chinese medicine that's said to be the space in between the heart and the lungs. Tummy expand, chest extend, sit bone strap, pelvic floor relax. So this concludes spinal movements lesson for the day. There's other examples of the shoulder which I'll probably show in another video about rotation of the shoulders and the upper spine. So for instance, the kind of rotation that we do in the shoulders, if you push the shoulder forwards for instance, it twists you in that direction. And you can aid that even more by taking the opposite shoulder back. So again, it's another thing that's a little bit looked. Probably while we're still on it, I just want to address the triangle. So triangle I've heard cued in a bunch of different ways. People say externally rotate both thighs. People say before you enter into it, push the hip back to initiate, I presume, a stretch in the front hamstring. Well, that's not really something that you need to do, and it can put overemphasis on the front hamstring and overstretch it. Overstretching is something that's not a good thing to do because it's your nervous system saying, hey, we're stretching, we might get injured. So it's the first warning signal of injury. So don't look for stretch in the practice. A good way to functionally work in this posture is to externally rotate the front thigh, gripping with the toes, checking it's okay, the knee is happy. Back thigh internally rotate. So that creates stability in the bandit. Because the leg is extended, the internal rotation muscles balance out that extension. Because this leg is flexed at the hip, external rotation can strengthen the muscles that took us into flexion. Then you've got to lift out of the hips. You're creating spinal movement number 2, long spine. So short spine, long spine, forward bend, backward bend. Here in triangle pose, what we want is a long spine, and that comes from dropping the sitting bones down. So you're twisting out the front leg, twisting in the back leg. And lengthening long spine, dropping the sitting bones down. You can achieve this by pushing the feet away from each other. And then twist the tummy up towards the sky, subject to that not pinching either here or here. You want length here, and that external rotation will help you to create the length here. Because as you turn the hip out, it moves the hip away from the sacrum. Turning the tummy up towards the sky. And now the shoulders, if you take your left shoulder back and your right shoulder forwards, that increases the twist towards the upper thoracic. Whereas if you turn the left shoulder down towards the ground and right shoulder back, obviously that decreases the ability to twist in the upper chest and to open the upper thoracic. Twist that one out, twist this one. Turn the tummy up. Triangle pose. And it can be here. If you want, you can do it Ashtanga style. You can take the finger down to the tongue and create a resistance. But this isn't appropriate for most people. And actually, it's not even that comfortable. I can do it, but it doesn't feel nice, so I don't do it anymore. So yeah, there's some things for you.